Okay, we're live on YouTube, but I am thinking that something went wrong with our Facebook, so we're going to remove and then add again on Facebook, but we're going to be streaming together on net. So awesome. We have it. We have it. Okay, great. We're also live on our Facebook group. So we are also going to share with participants that we are live now. All right. Okay, we are live. Okay. All right, we have people waiting already and watching, and we are live already. So welcome here, welcome back here. This is the last session. And I want to tell you something about this last session. Trust me, by the time we're done, you will be glad we are at this conference. So, today we started from moving from the US to Nigeria, back to the US. Now we've gone to the UK. That's where we are right now. So we're bringing you word from the UK. We've left the United States. We've left Nigeria. We've gone to the UK. So we're bringing you somebody that is pretty special to me. And he's here. In fact, before we just joined, he was just saying, "How did you even get me to just be here?" I said, "You don't know. I don't pull you by your tail and you're here straight up." I don't take it for granted that I'm able to have these amazing people in my life. Trust me, it's one of my superpowers. It's one of the things that I really love. Let's hear a few things about Ben. So Uncle Ben has been a real TIP member. Uncle Ben goes as far as paying for courses for people to attend free. That's one of we call them the sponsors of TIP Academy. Yes. So, and then Uncle Ben has a lot to give. Many times he does not even have the time. But yet, you will see him. All I need to do is to go back and say, you need to come and talk about something. And then he appears. Somehow, I don't know how, but somehow, we're here. And Uncle Ben is always here supporting. Like I said, I do not take it for granted. But let me tell you a little bit about Uncle Ben. Apart from the fact that we grew up in the same town, somehow we connected on Facebook and it was like magic, just like that. So, I keep telling you about the powers of the internet. Amazing, amazing, awesome something. This is why you must be deliberate in this time. It's no longer the same. All right? Let me tell you a bit about Uncle Ben. Apart from the fact that we know that he's married to Golibe, which should be the first identity, Abi, Uncle Ben. All right? Ben is a multidisciplinary professional and a scientist. He's also a clinical psychohypnotherapist, an NLP master practitioner. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. All right? And he's also a life coach. His area of focus is mainly on studying human behaviors, all right, at different levels, micro and macro. As a behavioral change expert, his work mainly focuses on the neurological and the cognition aspects of behavior and the behavioral change in trauma and stress management, specifically childhood trauma and psychoneuroimmunology. He enjoys helping people make connection between different life events and how to break free from retrogressive patterns. Ben believes that fathers have an important role to play in redefining and actualizing societal values through understanding the psychological dynamics that is involved. Ben is very big on fatherhood. In fact, in our last TIP Fathers Conference, Ben was also here last month speaking at that conference. So even before the conference was finished, I told him, "You're going to also be here and, to also be able to talk about that." Let me tell you something very funny that happened yesterday. Uncle Ben was ready to be on this conference. In fact, he's been so eager to be on this conference more than even the conference. So he thought the conference had started yesterday. So he was, chatting me frantically. So where's the link to, get in? Where's the so at the time he now said, okay, it's not today, it's tomorrow. In fact, I had a good laugh, after this. Someone says Uncle Ben psycho this, psycho that. That's a good one. And Uncle Ben is pretty passionate about the TIP Academy. Like I always say about most of the coaches that are here, the support I've been able to get somehow from all the people from all over the world. Somehow, I don't know how, but we know that the grace of God is here. So thank you so much, Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben is a friend, he's a big brother, he's just, good like that. Thank you, Uncle Ben, for being here. We appreciate you. And I'm going to be leaving the studio for you. So I will be in the background. And when you're done, I will be back. Welcome here, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be part of what's going on with the Intentional Parent Academy and the whole plan and platform. I'm wearing a shirt that has Daddy on it because this is what my kids gave me on Father's Day. And I thought, what a better time to wear this if I'm going to be talking about parenting and childhood. So yes, today the main thing I wish to bring to the party is making a connection between what really happens in childhood. We all hear many times that our childhood affects our adulthood, but do we really know how and in what capacity? Because a lot of my work is focused on childhood trauma and how we can release that in a lot of the adult situations we see, which I would point to as we continue. I thought it would be best to share this idea. And so today I will be talking about attachment, what it is, the different stages, the different styles, how the ways that attachment happens. And then I will touch upon trauma and how these relate. Bearing in mind that the aim of this talk today really is to bring some awareness to some of the things you probably see in yourself, which as a parent, you might not have been able to answer or to understand. And of course, how you can prevent that in your children, because through this conversation, some things might become even clearer to you. So if you haven't got a pen or paper, maybe grab one just in case there are any important notes to make. But I believe you can always rewatch this video. Let's start with attachment. What is attachment? If I ask you what is attachment, what comes to mind? What we define attachment as is any form of emotional bond that is formed between objects, even in order to establish any sense of security and safety. Now, a child psychologist that I like a lot, Dr. Mate, he said that he defined parenting as that for parenting to happen, there has to be a vulnerable entity, which will be the child, a responsible adult, which would be the parent or the caregiver, which is a phrase I use a lot now today. And then there would be attachment. Now, where usually there are many children, there are many parents, but the attachment bit is where a lot of things are not very well understood. So what attachment is that emotional bond that is formed between the child and the parent to establish a sense of security and safety. And although our attachment starts in infancy, that need for attachment in relationships continues all through our entire life and replicates itself over and over again. This is where it gets interesting because it means that once we have a safe and secure attachment to our mother or primary caregiver, we will also seek out friends and other family members to support us and to help us figure out who we truly are. We are wired for attachment. That's the best way to put this. But why? How come we're this wired for attachment? It's because we need that connection to physically survive. Imagine a baby, for example. Babies just can't do anything for themselves. And beyond that, any form of earlier patterns of connection or attachment that we form. When I use the word attachment, think about connection. So any of these that we establish at any point earlier in our life would affect everything else in life, from how we interact socially and emotionally to how we cope in our environment. And the big one is it also affects how we recover from any form of stress, whether that stress is physical or emotional. Therefore, whatever model we get from our caregivers becomes exactly the model that we replicate in other relationships. So think about it. When, as a child, something scary happens, what do? We run to the person or persons who make us feel safe and secure. Because having that secure and healthy attachment to a caregiver is what gives us the sense of safety somewhere, and that's a safe place that we can run to. But where we don't have such a connection, what happens? We feel unsafe, and we quite quickly start to view things differently. The world becomes what we see through the lenses of people are always mean to me. The world seems to be unsafe suddenly. We look at that, what can go wrong? I wonder what can go wrong. Why are people trying to cheat me? All these things, even that struggle to be as optimistic as to see whether things can work or not work. We don't even see a happy ending to anything when there is that sort of sense of, oh, things are not safe enough. So let that sink in for a moment. Because I think it might be important at this stage to talk about the stages of attachment. I mean, that's pretty common sense. So it will be the stages, the ways it happens, and the types. These will be the three things I will cover quite quickly. Research tells us there are four main attachment styles. I will talk about them. But there are three stages of attachment that then carry on throughout. The first stage is the pre-attachment stage, and it occurs from when the baby is born to about 3 months. At this stage, babies don't care. They don't who gives them the care. They don't show any preference whatsoever for their caregiver. So regardless of who comes along when they cry or who changes them or feeds them or whatever, they're fine with it. For the first 3 months, we don't really care who's taking care of us. And then the second stage, of course, which is where there's a bit of indiscriminate attachment. And that's where the baby starts to show some preference for their primary caregiver, usually a mother or a father or a nanny, whoever. And it doesn't matter. At this stage, it occurs between 3 to 7 months, and sometimes it could start a bit early, like 6 weeks. What happens at this stage is that the baby starts to differentiate between familiar and unfamiliar people. And then the third stage of attachment starts from around 7 months, which is the discriminate attachment. 7 months up to about 11 months, babies start to show a definite preference for one caregiver, the primary caregiver. And what you will notice in a situation like that is that the baby will visibly protest if they're being separated from that caregiver. And it's also at this stage, because of this attachment stage, we start to see what is called separation anxiety for the first time in babies, which I think is something that you can relate to. And then from that stage, we then go on to our stage of multiple attachments, which starts from around 9 months. From at this point, children have the ability to form close bonds with more than one primary caregiver. So what we notice is that they feel attached. Yeah, they can feel quite attached to another parent, grandparents, siblings, people around, neighbors, aunties, whatever, and they can be soothed by any of these persons. Now, once the multiple attachment stage is hit, we carry on with that for most of our lives. But the ways in which we try to attach or connect remains the same. I'll talk about the six different ways of attaching, and this is from the work of Dr. Neufeld and Dr. Mache. They are two both medical professionals, but also pediatric psychologists. They looked at this thing very much and wondered, how do people, what are the ways in which connection can happen? And by connection, we're talking about attachment. The first is sense or senses, which is that physical proximity. That's what this is all about. So the child needs to sense the person that they are attached to. This can be through, think of the five senses. It can be through smell, through sight, through sound, through touch. I remember when my little boy was born, and at some point, one of the ways of getting him to kind of relax was to take my wife's um, coat or jumper or whatever and put it by the pillow. So as long as he can smell mommy, he's fine. So this is what happens. The child will do whatever possible to remain in close contact with the person that they feel they're trying to connect to. What we also find then is that where it is not possible for that to happen, the child gets really frustrated about it. So they will protest that thing, like you're trying to take a child away from the mother. Well, they're trying to connect through that physical touch, physical bonding. Okay. But the second way that we connect and attach to people is through sameness, which is an interesting concept, because the concept of sameness is where the child seeks to be like those he or she feels closest to. So when you see children imitating you, that is a way of attaching. It has an evolutionary perspective to it, because if you think about it, back to the days of the cavemen, for example, or the herd, if you're not part of the community, doing what the community is doing, dressing like that, and all that, you will be attacked. In fact, you will see this in animal kingdom as well and everywhere. So there's safety in sameness all the time. And we know that there are two models with children. We talk about what we call the peer-oriented children model and the parent-oriented children model. Hopefully, as I continue to speak, you will understand the difference. But quite quickly, peer-oriented is where the children start to get their nurturing and attachment and all that from peers. And the other, for parent-oriented, is more from parents. We know that peer-oriented children model there, in that particular model, the children always want to walk and talk and do things, their demeanor, their appearance, their gestures, like their peers, which is when we talk about, when we say that there is a trend, it happens because of this way of connecting to the others and attaching. Sameness is also what gives rise to the idea of identification, when one sense of self merges with their object of identification. So this object of identification may be a parent, it may be a country, it may be a sports team, a role, a hero, an idea, even work. So what we find as behavioral researchers is that there's we actually traced extreme nationalism and racism with to be based on identifying one's sense of self with one's country or ethnic group. So at a deep level of some of these vices is people trying to connect and attach. Now, here's the interesting part. The more dependent a person is, the more intense these identifications are likely to be. And that then takes me on to the third way that we try to form connection and attachment. And it is through belonging and loyalty. In fact, this is the aspect of attachment that, even though it starts in toddlerhood, we consistently see show up all the way in adulthood. And mostly this will happen when it is unmet in childhood. With belonging and loyalty, it is where to be close to someone is to consider that person, you consider that person as your own. With kids, you see this when they go mine, 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 okay, with whatever they're attached to, be it a toy, a sibling, a parent. I'm sure you might have seen situations where there's an only child, and then they have a sibling, and then they start to feel a bit jealous about the sibling because of the attention and all that. This is because they feel like, oh, my mom is being shared, my dad is being shared. And the sense of loyalty that this also elicits means that we instantly can create a peer oriented kid if they don't feel like they own us as their parents. Excuse me. Now, what do you notice with peers anyway? They're always seeking to possess one another. And this is for the subconscious reason of, I don't want to lose this person. Does that sound familiar in relationships? Because when in adults, we try to possess our romantic partners, this is exactly why. I mean, in therapy, as soon as I hear any clauses from someone that suggests that you think you own the person you're relating to, I instantly know that there wasn't this bit of connection wasn't well met in the childhood experience. The other way we try to connect with people is through significance, which is to feel that we matter to someone. Of course, it is human nature to hold close what we value, and so we are wired to associate significance with closeness. It is seen very much at that sort of preschool level where kids seek attention or they seek to please or to get some approval. When your child is seeking for notice, they are not trying to be disruptive. They're trying to connect with you. They're trying to feel like they are of value to you. Imagine what happens to a child who doesn't get this sense of significance at this stage. What will happen is that such a person will then become an adult who is very critical of themselves and others. They often struggle with self-esteem issues and that sense of I am not enough. And I think I'm going to touch upon that as we go on. So we've talked about senses. We've talked about significance. No, I haven't talked about significance yet. I've talked about belonging and loyalty. I've talked about sameness. Now, after all these ones, the other way that we can form connections with people is through feeling. And by feeling, I mean this sort of warm, affectionate, loving feeling, because emotions are always involved with attachment. And for a child, emotion is a big deal. Children literally will fall in love with people they are attached to, whether real or imagined. Did you know that when a child who experiences emotional intimacy and safety with their parents, that sort of child can actually handle physical separation much better? And this is because subconsciously they carry, think about the voices we have in our heads. We actually carry our parents around, so to speak, in our heads. When there's some emotional intimacy between a child and their parent, they carry that image of the loving parent in their mind, and constantly they will feel that support and comfort. They are less impulsive in romantic relationships, and like obsessiveness, impulsiveness arises from that fear of rejection or abandonment. So you may hear people as adults constantly refer to their loving parent in a fond way when they speak. This is because they naturally are recalling all those great and fond memories and moments which formed that bond. And the final way that we try to connect with each other is through being known. Being known is sort of about sharing personal information. And this is since to feel close to someone is to be known to them. It's as simple. So remember how we said that attachment through senses is all about physical knowing. So it is physically through the five senses, you know that the person is there. Well, here we're talking about psychological knowing. A child will share their secrets with you as a way of forming a connection. Even before it becomes secret, it is for them some special information to come and giggle and walk away or run away. And that is a way of trying to form a connection. However, where there's an imbalance as we will see when we talk about the different types of attachment. Where there's this imbalance, a child can then become less and less and less and less known to their parents. And then we get the situation of, I don't even think I know my child. Parent-parented kids comfortably will share their secrets with their parents and feel like they also know their parents. Because in situations like that, the parent is not ashamed to be emotionally vulnerable in front of the kids to say, yeah, this is how I'm feeling now. They don't pretend to be perfect. Now, the reverse is the case for peer-oriented kids who have been pushed away, usually unintentionally, by their parents. And so such kids, what do? They tell their peers their secrets instead. And they connect more with their peers. Okay, so we've seen the 6 ways of attaching through the senses: sameness, belonging, loyalty, significance, feeling, and being known. And now that we've discussed those, let me talk about the different types of attachment that appear as a result of these ways of connecting. And the first is what is called secure attachment. With secure attachment, what is happening is the child knows that their primary caregiver will always be there when they cry and soothe them. I mean, this is the goal, it's the ultimate goal that we want to achieve, right? Because the child can count entirely on this assurance all through their life that their primary caregiver will be there for them whenever they need it. This makes the child feel incredibly safe when they're with their primary caregiver. This is the type of attachment that the child then uses as a safe base from which to freely explore the world around them. Because to them, somewhere at the back of their minds, they know that there's a safe place they can always fall back to. The second style is called avoidant or insecure avoidant. And this sort of attachment will form when the child cannot really count on their primary caregiver to be there for them. So the primary caregiver is somewhat disconnected from the child, either emotionally or physically. So let's say you're, as a parent, you're working, you work from home and you're there all the time, you're doing your work, and the child is around playing on their own with their toy. You're not necessarily engaging with them. Even though you're physically there, you're emotionally not attuned to the emotions of the child. And it will create this sort of avoidant, insecure avoidant attachment. So we're talking about being attuned to the emotions of the child. The child deeply feels like their needs are being dismissed in this sort of attachment. For example, if you've had statements like, "Why are you embarrassing me? Would you stop it now?" When a child is maybe upset about something or even throwing a tantrum, and a child throwing a tantrum simply means the child cannot express what they truly feel. That frustration results in an energy outburst. It is not a child trying to be annoying, it's a child trying to really communicate to you, speak to you, to say to you, tune into me and help me out here because I can't reach you. So when we then say to the child, "Why are you embarrassing me? Stop it now. Get a grip." What the child hears is you're avoiding meeting my emotion. You're avoiding facing my emotion. And that will create that avoidant attachment. This also happens when parents talk to kids as if they're adults and as if they're supposed to be able to control themselves and suit themselves. And of course, that's not the case. A kid is a kid. This is a brain. I always bring this up when I speak to people. All of us get born with this bit of the brain. The brain, well, it's like in the brainstem, but that's what we call our brain one, our reptilian brain that controls our bodily function and the chemicals in the body, how fight or flight, how we breathe, the heart rate, all those things. Everyone is born with that fully intact. Then the midbrain is like the emotional center, which starts to develop as soon as the baby is born. And it's formed more and more through attachment and things. And then the bigger part of the brain is the logical center, the cognitive center, the neocortex. is developed almost through the entire life of the child. That's why we go to school. So your child doesn't have that logical power that you have, and therefore he's actually not understanding what you're saying. Not that they don't want to, they can't. A child makes sense of the world through feelings. If they can't feel it, if they can't interpret it as feeling, and at the bottom of that, really, as a matter of, am I surviving or am I not surviving? Am I going to live or am I going to die? If it doesn't make sense to them that way, they won't do it. So when you talk to your child as if the child is an adult, then what is going on is that the child doesn't know to count on you and is likely to attach with a complete stranger. In adulthood, how does this play out? In adulthood, such persons tend not to be able to express what they feel. So they feel one thing inside, but show something else outside. They also tend to find it very difficult to process emotions. When you hear such persons in a situation that is really, really calling for empathy, you might wonder, does this person even have feelings at all? The truth is, they can't process it. They don't know what to do with it. Even when you find them owning up to their own internal situation to say, yeah, something's going on internally, they will do so with an air of, don't be sorry for me. They don't want you to help them emotionally because they have no clue how to navigate their own emotions. And they don't believe anyone can be counted upon to do that either, because that template has been wired already to say or show that you can't count on anybody to help you navigate your emotion. Of course, this is why therapists exist, right? Now, the third style is the insecure, anxious attachment style, which is observed when the caregiver places their own needs before that of the child. And it will create unpredictability and inconsistency. And it is this unpredictability and inconsistency that will create insecurity and anxiety, hence the name insecure, anxious. So, for example, a parent is in a bad mood, and then the child needs to be soothed or anything. And then the parent is sort of responding to the child based on their mood. When you do that, what you're communicating to the child is the emotion I'm feeling right now as a parent is much more important than yours. And since this also implies that when the parent is in a good mood, they will operate from a place of, yeah, they will respond to the child from that bit. It creates that ambivalent sort of expectation in a child, which is unpredictability. Now, when the child feels their parents, their sense of being soothed and cared for by their parents is unpredictable, what do you think is going to happen? They can't attach because it doesn't feel safe. Of course, they also start to see the world as unsafe. How does this apply in adulthood? Well, people like this in adulthood tend to always put other people's emotional needs before their own, which means until everyone else is okay, they don't feel okay. That results in anxiety issues, of course, and stress-related issues, weight problems. And I mean, such issues would be inevitable because how can you try to sort out everyone's problem before feeling okay? It means you'll be in a perpetual stress response situation. It will disrupt your immunity. It also means that the person will not be very happy internally often and will constantly blame themselves when they can't suit another person's emotional state. Such people also tend to overcompensate. Why? Because the template they're running with is your emotional state, your internal state is only going to be met when that of others is met. Because moms or dads or whoever the primary caregiver, their emotional states have to come first before the child. So this is how that template is formed. And then there is the fourth attachment style, which is insecure, disorganized, or just you can say disorganized attachment style is ambivalent as well. And it stems from the same, well, not exactly the same one, but another level of unpredictability and inconsistency from the parent or the primary caregiver in response to whatever attachment needs the child has at that time. So what this means is that one moment, the same parent is really mean or hurtful, inducing fear. And another moment, the same parent is nice. So let's say a child is crying and then mommy comes to soothe the child and then the child just screams louder, which is simply a child communicating to you to say, I really want you, or some other deeper emotional communication. But what do we get? Mommy goes, get yourself together. Stop being embarrassing. The child gets confused internally, deeply, because 1 second, mommy was going, mommy's here. Okay, okay. And next second, stop being embarrassing. And what that communicates to the child is, I'm not sure I can count on you because I don't know when you switch from nice to unnice. And that will only reinforce insecurity in a child. And once that happens, we are creating yet again a peer oriented kid. Children with this type of attachment will show signs of confusion and they will be disoriented many times as well. They seem lost for no visible reason sometimes. They tend to freeze when upset or something scary happens. They rarely go to anyone for support. And you may have seen adults like that who think, um, well, who you even might think of as, why are you enduring this same abuse over and over and over and over again? Why don't you speak up? To them, what are they thinking? The word, I don't know. I can't predict the word. I can't count on anybody. They freeze up because that ambivalent confusion created in childhood still locks on. What does all this mean in adulthood? Well, we know already from research that there are very, very strong links between poor attachment and psychological issues. And I'm talking about serious issues like PTSD, oppositional defiant disorder, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, conduct disorder, name them. People who have attachment issues actually struggle with maintaining happy and healthy relationships with others as we get older. So having attachment issues simply means that we never felt like we could count on a caregiver. Simple as that. So whoever it is that is caring for us, they sent us mixed messages. We could not trust them. Therefore, when we're in distress, we don't look to outside support. We don't look for any support. Instead, we withdraw and isolate ourselves. And such persons will tell you that they can only count on themselves since they believe that others will just end up letting them down. Even when they can't vocalize this, that is what is running deep somewhere inside. And we know that beneath every parent's anger and frustration is what I would call a sense of hurt, which is consistent with feeling of being betrayed or a form of betrayal. Because most of us, nearly all of us, have got some sort of attachment issue along the way. Bear in mind that our parents have their own attachment issues, and you can only parent from where you are, so to speak, which is why in my line of work, inner child healing is a big deal. It's teaching you how to reparent yourself becomes a big deal. Okay, so even though they beneath every parent's many parents' anger and frustration is that intense sense of hurt or feeling of betrayal. What do? We typically ignore and discount that internal warning. We attempt to soothe our unease rather by reducing the matter to some behavioral issues. Oh, no, it's just a behavioral problem of a child, or hormones, or just normal teenage rebellion. When in fact, the real issue is that of incompatible attachments. Therefore, trying to punish or control behaviors without actually addressing the underlying dynamics is like a doctor prescribing medication for symptoms while ignoring the cause. So I invite you to consider that a deeper understanding of your children will empower you as parents to deal with bad behaviors in truly effective ways. One of the ways of seeing how your main attachment style is playing out in your adult life is to pay attention to how you respond or react to relationships or in relationships, because we often project whatever childhood sentiments we had for our primary caregivers onto our spouses. It happens as a deeply unconscious, should I use the word default thing, literally spontaneous. We don't plan it before it shows itself. This is because attachment happens when we are babies. And bear in mind, babies cannot rationalize anything. So we just hold on to a certain familiar feeling. When a child is scared or a person is scared, chemicals flood the body. And the more that happens, the more we become familiar with those chemicals. And when those chemicals are not flooding, we have to recreate them. So now you know why some people just seem to create drama all the time. Because lots of our healthy behaviors are actually that innate. Okay. Quickly, let me talk about trauma then, which is defined as a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. So in order for someone to be traumatized, they have to fear for their life or the life of someone else. And trauma events can be big events, like, someone witnessed the murder of their parents in their presence or something like that. Or it can be lots of smaller events, like flogging a child. A child is not logically processing what is going on. All they hear is, mommy wants to kill me, daddy wants to kill me, mommy doesn't care for me. So from witnessing that sort of brutal murder to constant yelling, all this can create trauma. There's a theory called the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges, I think, in psychology, which explains to us how our body manages these things. In a nutshell, really, is about that when we're in an emotionally healthy or non-stressful situation, our bodies stay in a social engagement state, which is happy, normal, there's nothing freaking us out state. In this state, we are capable of connecting with people. The interaction is easier to happen. But when stress occurs, then there's an initial freeze as the brain prepares to either fight or flee. However, when the threatening situation takes over and there's no other fighting or fleeing, say the lion has already got you, our parasympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive and shuts us down. Why? Because the real aim of us as a species or our brain is to stay alive. So your brain and your nervous system is designed and wired to keep you alive, even if it means shutting you down from feeling anything. You might have heard people who maybe have lost someone saying they feel numb, or when something big, an emotional situation happens, we feel numb. That sense of dissociation or numbness or hopelessness, or even shame, there's a sense of feeling trapped out of the body, disconnected from the world. These are all things that happen with trauma. And if you see an adult who is a bit aloof, or that child who you complain about that, I don't know why she never listens or he never listens, just looks at me, and I talk and talk, it goes from one ear and exits the other. Well, you've traumatized them. That is what's going on. End of. And also, here's a fun fact for you that when we're in a stress response state, things are constricting in the brain, right, to prepare us somehow to survive. Some of the tiny muscles in the ear actually constrict. So when you are yelling at your child, the child is actually not hearing you because nature has made it so. Because the person doesn't need to keep hearing, they need to survive. And there is an interesting link between shame and trauma. Just so you know, shame is that painful feeling of humiliation or distress that is caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior, whether it is a real feeling, well, the behavior was really foolish or you thought it was foolish. So shame is deeper than guilt because with shame, we view ourselves as being bad or wrong. But with guilt, we are only judging our behavior, not ourselves. We feel guilt when we judge our behavior as negative or wrong. And because guilt is about our actions, we find a way out of it by making amends. However, shame in itself is about ourselves and can be really, really self-destructive. And it's worth mentioning that shame develops over time, usually after the traumatic event has happened, or if the traumatic event is still recurring. How does it relate then? Usually, when a traumatic situation happens, and we think in hindsight, what we really think about is how we could have stopped it or how we might have enabled it. We start to feel full of shame. It also starts to touch upon a very dangerous parenting style we see. And I'm talking about the shaming style, where the child is shamed for little things. And the shaming takes the form of humiliation, like hitting the child in front of other siblings, or talking down at the child in front of others, or talking about the matter to your relatives, and then everyone is taking their turn to talk to the child. And we actually fool ourselves to think that the numerous talk is helpful, when in fact we're only satisfying our sense of I'm a good parent at the expense of a bigger, deeper injury in a child called shame. Some even use those words: you should be ashamed of yourself. If there's one thing you take out away from this session, please delete that line from your parenting line. Never tell your child you should be ashamed of yourself, because when you do that, you're creating a big monster. Why? Because the child doesn't process life logically. If a child thinks they are faulty, it affects everything else in their life. That's why many of us just don't feel enough. So we have to work very hard, be overly ambitious, very critical of others and ourselves, constantly seeking to escape reality. And social media has made that even more possible. It also fosters that emotional immaturity as well. And that's how the vicious cycle is formed, because a child doesn't process the world logically. The child cannot rationalize what happened. And in that frozen state, the subconscious literally stores a snapshot of the different stimuli, since there's no any kind of logical processing to it. This is why you have triggers, sounds, words, smells, phrases, colors, outfits. These might all relate to the sensory stimulus that you witness alongside whatever the trauma was. And I know someone that always has a panic attack when her husband returns from work. And even though she says, "Oh, I like spending time with you, it's good you're home," she's freaked out as soon as the gate is opened. Where did this come from? Because as a child, she experienced whenever daddy came home, there will be a lot of shouting and yelling, and even mommy might be hit. So this person, as a result of this, that terrifying effect lasted up till now. And they didn't realize that once there are multiple triggers, right? Opening of the gate, or return from work, car drives in, walk where, all these are multiple signal triggers, I should say. And because this person she kept feeling like, well, if I know what I know now, I could have protected my mom. I could have protected us. But no, you don't know what you know now, because it happened when you were a kid. Okay? I wonder how we're doing with time, because I think people might need to ask some questions. But just to summarize this a little bit, right? Hurt people just hurt others. It is that simple. Without dealing with any sense of shame, what we simply do is pass it on to inflict others. Hurt parents are hurting their children, and they rationalize it. Why would they rationalize it? Of course, because they do not understand that in the first place. Think about it, right? If you have a cold, and then you're served a tasty meal, your ability to enjoy that meal will actually be jeopardized by the fact that you have a cold. Yet you may rationalize it and say, "No, I didn't enjoy the meal because it isn't tasty." Well, it isn't tasty because you have a cold. So whatever rationalization you're giving to your parenting style, or what your relationship style generally with anybody, is actually coming out of a deeper thing that you might need to explore. Okay? I don't have time to talk about trauma bonding and trauma coupling, because that's also a very, very interesting area. So just to sort of summarize what I've been saying, attachment issues, and this is the real important bit for us as parents, attachment issues come from emotionally immature parents. And guess what? That always creates emotionally immature parents as well. And how do you know if you are an emotionally immature parent? Well, by definition, an emotionally immature parent is someone who lacks the emotional development that is needed to first recognize how you feel. And because you need to recognize and be okay with how you feel first before parenting a child, such persons struggle to connect with the child's emotion in a way that means and communicates safety to the child. So emotionally immature parents get hung up on their own experience and their sense of convenience and judgment. As a result of this, they are unable to actually be there for their children. Emotionally immature parents and emotionally unavailable parents have this thing in common: their inability to emotionally support their children. For such a parent, a child's cry is a disturbance rather than a signal. They see it as disruptive rather than a child's attempt to at communicating an emotion, and they are unable to really be there for their children. Someone puts it in these very beautiful words. Let me read those out for you, if I can find where. Yeah, it says emotionally immature individuals walk through life blaming their problems on the people in their lives or their situation and circumstances. They blame others for their anger, sadness, and depression, but they rarely look inward. Instead of assuming responsibility for how they feel, they expect others in their life to see their point of view. They attempt to control others, which is something that you just cannot control. And emotionally immature people are emotionally dependent. They seek to find reasons to justify their feelings, and they're often skilled at manipulating others rather than accepting what is. Emotionally dependent people tend to obsess about how to get others to think like them. They will resort to unhealthy behavior to get their way, even if it costs them what was once a loving relationship. I think this is strong and deep. So it's very, very easy to identify emotionally mature persons. They just enjoy being the victim, and they thrive on having people feel sorry for them constantly. They never take responsibility for anything. Well, because to them, it is always someone else's fault. They're always attention seeking, and if you miss out in any of their demands, all hell is loose. You didn't call me, you didn't text, you didn't bring this on time, blah, blah, blah. They fuss about stuff so much as if others have nothing more to do than to run around trying to look after them. Such persons don't have very long lasting or good close relationships because they lose these things to their emotional volatility. So, in a nutshell, reparenting yourself or working with your inner child is really, really, really extremely important on your journey as a person as well as on your journey as a parent. I really thought I would be speaking for about 40 minutes, but I think I've gone a little bit over. So have we got time for a question or two?
Yes, we should. We have 10 minutes. I'm sure a lot of people were writing and absorbing like I was. So I guess we might have one or two questions. Please, if you have questions, we have 8 minutes to go. If you have questions, please type it in the comment section. But before we go today, there's something I would like you to do as we are also winding up. Go on your timeline, Instagram, wherever. Share one thing that you learned from each of the coaches. Tag them, tagging them to know, that you got value from these sessions is the reward. Because trust me, we're not paying any of these coaches to bring them here. Of course, you know that you didn't pay to be here. So telling the world what you have learned and how you learned it will help, you know, take these coaches out there. So please, and then remember to also tag the Intentional Parent Academy, or you tag just the Intentional Parent or Wendy Ologe to your post. Please, let's get the conference blazing up, just like the value that we're getting here. Let people in your timeline see that you're getting real value. Someone says deep, deep, deep as usual. I can see Dr. Kenny. Dr. Kenny says, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Kenny. It's good to see you
Thank
here.
you.
Oh, okay. Celia is still here. Celia just finished speaking just before you got here.
All right.
That was such a great training. Thank you, Celia.
Thank you,
That was
Syria.
Chinye Robina says, deep, deep as usual. Chinye Robina has been here from the beginning. She's also speaking on the third day. Amazing sex education coach. We're going to be listening to her in a few days' time. We also have another person, emotionally mature parent, rarely looking well. They tend to, get others to think like them. Funny enough, many of the things that Ben shared here is some of the things that we all come out to say, but we all turned out okay. Last. We all just tell ourselves, they did it to us now. And so what? We are all okay. But the question I like to always ask is, did we really turn out okay? Look at all the things that happened to you, relationship wise. If you get deep into some of these things, then you understand how far these things, you need to actually help yourself on this journey. You need to seek help. There's no gainsaying on this. You need to seek help to walk your journey as a parent. If not, you will make same mess that have been made, over in the generation. There's something that we say in our Healing from Parenting hot class. We say, will you become that generational transition? That person, generation transitional character of your generation, that person who sits, in the bridge and says, this thing that happened, we want to end it, in this generation. All right. Someone says, I'm really very blessed. Celia said people need to recognize where they need to help for themselves and reach out for help. Yes, reaching out for help means that you're emotionally stable to start with. The fact that you're reaching out for help means that you're emotionally stable. When you're thinking that you don't need help, it shows a lot of emotional instability on your journey. So when you recognize that you need help, it means that you are making progress. That's actually what it meant. All right. Uncle Ben, in fact, I was absorbing a lot of the things and writing and sharing on my timeline as well as you were speaking. I think we have a question. Please, what can I do? I have gone a long way reparenting myself, but because I still get to communicate with my parents, I kind of have the wounds reopen often because they are still not sensitive to their words and the view of me.
Okay.
Chomo Goji wants to know.
Chema, this is a great question, and well done for trying to reparent yourself. The truth is, if you're still being triggered by your parents, then it means there's still some work to do in one, how you view them, and two, how you're reparenting yourself. Because, for a start, you must understand and agree and accept that your parents did nothing intentionally to hurt you. They only transferred what they have, basically, and whatever their own attachment issues are. So you can view them from a point of view of empathy. That's one. Two, you are an adult now, but you're still relating to them with your inner child. That inner child needs to know that the new parent is yourself. And so you are the one that can take your inner child whenever you feel any trigger, rather than say, oh, you said this, you did this, you did that. You don't know, you acknowledge my inner child is feeling unvalidated. My inner child is feeling not cared for. It's your inner child right there. And then you can talk to yourself and you'll be fine. Because if you're expecting your parents to change, that may never happen. They may never change their word. They may never change their view of you. In fact, what you think their view of you is your perception of their view of you as opposed to their actual view of you, even if the words sound different. Why do I say this? The words we use to describe people are more of the shadow side of us for negative descriptions. And for positive descriptions, they are the side, they are what they are, the positive side, right? What makes us feel a sense of pride and a sense of honor. So your parents to them, you might still be their sweet little girl, but it might be the sweet little girl they didn't know how to connect to. But there's nothing they know to do about that. So the first thing that in inner child healing work, the very first thing we do is to get you to forgive yourself for blaming yourself for things that are not your fault. And then we get you to forgive your parents because actually it wasn't also their fault. They played out what they got. And once that forgiveness happens, and forgiveness does not mean tolerating or accepting stuff. Forgiveness means you accept that what has happened has happened. And once you accept that what has happened, you can let go of that and then move on with new definitions for yourself. You can what's the word now? Redefine your way of relating with them. You have that right to redefine that way of relating with them. Okay. There's another question, and I think we might be out of time.
Yeah, there are okay. So there are questions popping up, and we need to also begin to round up. So Gochi, if you can reach out to us, and if you want to reach out to Ben, that's good. Please just reach out. The session might not really allow us to be able to give you all that you need to do just here. All right. So Ruth says, where a parent has shamed the child and has made the child withdrawn, what can the parent do to repair this?
First of all, the parent needs to acknowledge that they did something wrong with to the child. They need to say to the child, I'm sorry I hurt you. And you must make eye contact with the child and show your emotional vulnerability to say to the child, I'm sorry I hurt you. Whatever, and then you refer to whatever it is that happened that you shamed the child. Say, when this happened, I shouldn't have shamed you. You're not ashamed. If you knew better, you would have acted better. And I know better, that's why I'm sorry. That literally, that's one way of just getting rid of that. And also never repeat the shaming. That's the short answer.
All right. Okay, we have another question down here. I can't see the person's name, probably chatting from Facebook, because we're streaming both on our YouTube channel and Facebook. Says, we have seen different attachment problems. All right. And in children, please, what is the ideal attachment goal for a parent towards his child or her child?
Beautiful question. The ideal goal really is to create a secure attachment. And that secure attachment is to be there for your child, full stop. Not just physically, but emotionally. Learn how to ask your child, how do you feel about this? And not try to invalidate their feeling or to tell them what they should feel, rather. But to help your child to know how to walk through their emotions, through the feelings. It means that you also a vulnerable person, you reparent yourself enough to identify those different ways of connection that we talked about, the 6 different ways. And when your child is doing those, know that this is a communication to say, I want to connect with you. And therefore, you control any impulsive reaction that is coming up, rather than saying, why are you seeking for notice? You know that the child is simply trying to connect. And you say to the child, I hear you, I see you. And then, carry on with whatever else. Okay? So basically, you've got to accept that parenting is not an easy job. It's one that requires intention, effort, consistency, and most importantly, you've got to keep learning, unlearning, relearning, and over and over and over again.
Oh yes, I think I like that word. You must keep learning, unlearning over and over again. So you don't just sit back and say, I went for TIP conference 2020 and I've learned everything I need to learn. So of course, I don't need to learn any other thing. But saying that you just need to keep learning is a journey, is not an end. I think there's another question.
Let me just add one quick thing on top of that, which is, can we just take away from this session a goal to say, I'm going to start to identify when my child is actually trying to connect with me. If that's just your goal for a week, or every day you say, I will identify 3 or 4 times that this child is actually trying to connect with me, and I will connect with them, that would be you heading straight on the positive journey. Can a child?
All right, so we're going to take the last question, and after this last question, we will be closing day 1. Please, can a child still be naturally withdrawn even when the parent is attached to him?
No. If a child is withdrawn, there's an attachment issue. Because we are social beings. We are not created to withdraw. I'm not going to go into this, but all the things going on in the brain are there to create a connection. We are social animals, end of, full stop. So if a child or any person is withdrawn from, if another adult is withdrawn, of course, we now know where to trace that back to. But if a child is withdrawn, there is some attachment issue going on there. And it should be a red flag to start to work on that relationship and connection you have with the child.
All right, awesome. Like I said earlier, if you registered for the conference, you're going to be getting everything that we have as regards freebies from all our speakers and also the partners that we have on this conference. You don't want to miss it. If you're not registered, that means you're not going to have access to them. And I want to say thank you to Uncle Ben, just as usual. Very deep stuff, like someone said. Deep. Someone said parenting is not an easy task. It's the one that needs intention, connection, learning, and relearning. Oh, yes, you need to continuously learn. And like I said earlier, One of the things that you can do for TIP and also for all the coaches that have come here to take out their time. 1 hour is precious time. Trust me. You don't want to know. 1 hour is precious time for all these people. All right. And we've done 4 hours today. All right. And one thing that we are asking is go on your social media handles and go and say thank you. Write a quote, tag the speakers, tag TIP or tag me when you log it, and share it out there. All right. Thank you so much. Someone says my takeaway is identifying when my child is trying to connect. That's my takeaway. Thank you so much, Uncle Ben. I so much appreciate you, and we're going to be releasing you. We've done 5 minutes extra. We promised the team. For the team is already poking me on the backside and saying, "Ma, you said we are not doing more than the stipulated time, so we're not going to be keeping you longer here. So please share with us what will be your last words to the parents that are watching you today."
To the parents that are watching me, I want to say well done, first of all, for being on that journey. Secondly, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And thirdly, there is a lot of hope. You only need to recognize that there is something that needs to be done. If you can look up, you can get up.
Awesome. I like those last words. If you can look up, you can get up. There's a lot to be done, and you can start getting them done from this moment. You can start something as simple as getting that book to read. You can start something as simple as joining that class to relearn. You can just start something as simple as going home and recognizing when you need to connect with your child. It's been 4 hours, day one. No, we didn't come to play. We told you earlier before the TIP conference started that we were going to give you value. We only deliver value, value to the end. Thank you so much to all our speakers, starting from the beginning today with Dr. Akasio, who opened up the floor with so much fire. Parents, came and was literally on fire. And then we moved to Coach ID. Coach ID went, in fact, so subtle yet was hitting the right chords. And then Celia came and gave the toddler parents the real thing. And the toddler parents are all going gaga right now. And then Uncle Ben has come to actually deeply make us to rethink again. This I turned out okay. Am I really okay? I think I like the way we have winded up today. All right. There's a lot to be done. We just need to look up and get up. And if we can do that, then our journey becomes a lot more better. Remember, you're tuned in to the Tensional Parent Annual Conference. And this is 2020. I'm loving the day one already. My daughters are full. You don't want to miss tomorrow. Tomorrow we have lined up people who are going to be speaking from their faith. Awesome people. Awesome people. The whole session tomorrow is just something else. Get into your inbox. If you're registered, you're going to be seeing all the details to the link to log on to be here tomorrow. Our first session tomorrow kicks off at 3 p.m. and we're going to be having you, John Moba, all the way from Germany, speak on this platform. We told you that we went all over the world to get you the real deal. Yes. And we are committed to seeing that you are having an awesome time in these 7 days. This is TIP Annual Conference 2020. See you tomorrow. Do not forget to go on your social media handle, share something you learned today. Tag the speaker, tag TIP conference, tag me when you log in if you don't find TIP, and do have an amazing evening. Thank you again, Uncle Ben. You are having a rave of accolades in our comment section with a lot of people saying awesome things about you. Of course, Uncle Ben is not a stranger. We all know Uncle Ben. People are already chatting me with different things backstage. I say, hey, your Uncle Ben, is he your brother? Yes, he's my brother. Yay! So yeah. So we're famsing, when you say the famsing thing, Oh, yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. I do really appreciate you for doing this again and again. Thank you, Celia. Most of the coaches who spoke today have been here from the beginning to the end. I am so honored. Coach ID, Coach ID, Celia, and Dr. Akasio. And we also have Ben, Uncle Ben, close the session today. Good night, everybody, and see you at 3 p.m. tomorrow. The Intentional Parent Conference continues tomorrow at 3 p.m. Have an amazing evening. And remember, look up and get up.